showing up on the, I went online, so if it's, is it delayed?
Is it what?
Is it delayed because?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, all right, so I'll wait a couple minutes.
Just in case.
It's,
I'd like to check to make sure everything's
yeah.
working.
Hi, hello and welcome.
Hello.
Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Some of my favorite people in the room tonight. And we got some favorite people out there online. Thank you so much for joining us online. Yeah, so for the next little bit, we're going to be talking about A Course in Miracles. And let's take a good deep breath. We know who we are in truth. We know what we are in truth. We know how we serve in truth. We are free. We are free. We are free. We are in the upper room. We are here. We are here. We are here. It will be so. Behold, we make all things new. God is, God is, God is. Let's take another good deep breath. And we allow only that which is expressing Christ consciousness, and only that which is in harmony with the purpose of being. The Father's will, not ours, be done. And may the light of divine truth and understanding enrich the affections of all mankind. We are truly blessed. We are blessed beings. And we welcome in our guides, our teachers, our loved ones, and the connection with our higher self, and allow ourselves to then be the expression of that self in our journey here tonight through a deeper understanding of A Course in Miracles. Our topic tonight is singleness of purpose. Amen. Welcome back to the upper room. It's been a whole week since we've been here. And I'm excited about seeing your faces and being with you online. We want to give a special thank you to those who might be watching this or finding some value in our conversation tonight. We hope you will. We know we will. We believe that this teaching is profoundly the fastest route, if you will, to a higher level of ascension and higher level of consciousness, ultimately to the awakened mind, wherein we can continue the singleness of our purpose. And so tonight we'll discuss what that is. And we are following along with Raj Pur. And he began in 2002 teaching A Course in Miracles through Paul Tuttle. And we send out an email each week if you want to join our email list, acimstream.com. And you would get those episodes, and you would get just a quick email from us each week so that you can kind of follow along in the conversation, because that is the teaching from the author of the book, A Course in Miracles, the textbook, the workbook, and the manual for teachers, and some of the other publications and brochures that came along that Helen Schachman scribed now. Wow, I guess it's almost 55 years ago now. It's
Wow.
just about that. Yeah.
Is she still alive?
Oh, no.
No.
No, she transitioned, well, I should say, yes, absolutely, she's still alive. She's just not, she transitioned out of her former physical form. And I kind of think she's probably back, teaching us still and learning herself and being a teacher with us as well. So let's just jump in. So if anyone had a chance to listen to the recording, or if anyone was able to read through it, and you have something that's challenging you or interesting you or bringing up some questions for you, again, there's at this stage of Raj teaching, there's typically quite a few people in his audience that are still engaging him quite actively and asking questions. So
so this for me, this is on, so I didn't have a lot of time to review it, but I listened this afternoon, and he's talking about mutually agreed upon definitions and being in a group and speaking out the group, and so it's about how we, the way I understand it, how we dissolve fear. And usually we're in a group and we all agree that about the starving people, that's the way it is. And we try to discount it. And so I'm trying to get the crux to the message. I mean, the one thing he said, suffering is need unmet. Very simply, so look where there is need and find a way to meet it, not through your best judgments, not through your best definitions, not through any of that, but we know what it is. It's about going to the altar. God, what's the truth here? God, what do I need to see about this? But okay, so I understand that. We're supposed to go to the altar, and then our responses in a group will not be so ego-based, and we won't get so chastised like we usually do if we, separate from the group. So I guess what I wanted to say, what's the crux to just basically what is he saying here? I mean, I understand he's saying turn to the altar, turn to God, ask what's true here, but it's like I just didn't quite understand how that really works, as far as affecting the group. In other words, our responses when he was asked questions, your responses will be more loving and more accepting to the group. But do you understand what I'm trying to say?
I think I do. It's a good question. It's a good question. What are we unconsciously doing to ourselves when we join a group? We're outside of a group. And whatever the vibrational field is, there's a resonance between us and the group. Right? And there's lots of people, lots of belief systems, whatever. But the overall resonance is an attractor field. And we move into the group. But as soon as we move into the group, we have to become accustomed to and begin to accept the mutually agreed upon definitions of the group.
Yeah.
So, church is a wonderful example, right?
Yeah.
Because there's just church after church after church after church after church after church after church. And there's even some, what is, for lack of a better term, some satanic worship that occurs in some groups, right? So where is this group, resonating consciously? Because these are all levels of consciousness, and they're all levels of belief systems, right? And every one of these is a group with mutually agreed upon definitions.
I love you.
I love you too. How are you?
Hello. I love hi.
We love you guys.
All right, that's all I had to say.
Thank you. Have fun, you guys.
Were you talking to all of us or just Brother T?
There is only one thing going on in here.
You got it.
All of you.
And it's love. That's right.
Have a good night.
We were just visited by a dear friend, an incredible friend. So we look at the group, from the outside, and we're like, what is going on in this group? And then we investigate a little bit, right? Even if we're going on vacation, we go to another country, or we go to another city, right? What's going on? Because there's groups everywhere, right? And within each one of these groups, we have mutually agreed upon definition. Everybody there's mad about one thing or the other. They have mutually agreed upon definitions of the way that they interact with each other and behave with each other and behave with other groups, right? It could be war, or it could be some synergy where there's some resonance, but there could be some opposition, right? And they don't want to have anything to do with that group, right? In my case, I would say if it's a very low consciousness group, I really don't want to venture even anywhere into that vibrational field, because it pulls me down if I were fortunate enough to be in a higher level of consciousness. But what do we unconsciously do to ourselves when we join a group, any group, right? We have to check them out, and then we adopt to the mutually agreed upon definitions, and then immediately we become under the scrutiny of everyone in the group, right? That we maintain whatever those mutually agreed upon definitions are, because if we're not, then we can be catapulted outside the group, right? And now we're over here feeling like we're isolated and separated. And so then we go looking for another group to be associated with. Why? Why do we do that? Because God created you in relationship. And you cannot be outside of relationship. And to do what God, to work against, lack of a better way of putting it, to work against what God has created creates a dissonance. It creates an uncomfortableness. It creates insanity. Because you're trying to do something that is insane, which is to not be in alignment with truth, right? So the truth is what we're seeking, and so we look for it. Maybe people in this group have discovered it and we want to get in. But in order to get in, we have to accept some pretty weird beliefs. To be a part of a Course in Miracles group, you have to be a little, by the rest of the world's standards, a little crazy. Because what we're saying in a Course in Miracles group, what Jesus is teaching in the Course in Miracles, is that God did not create the world that we're experiencing. That God didn't put you here. So if everything's going great, you mean God's got nothing to do with it? Or if everything's going to hell in a hamburger, you mean God's got nothing to do with it? God created you with the ability to create your experience as a co-creator, or in the case of this experience, as someone who has been kicked out of the realm of truth and catapulted out of that group that's aligned. That would be the angels, Jesus, the masters, teachers, all of the ascended masters, and the uncountable number, for us at least, comprehensively, to be able to comprehend the massive amount of entities. The best example I can give you, we have enough information through the work that we've done with satellites and telescopes and getting out into outer space, and we see that our little rock here is extremely small, compared to some of the size of some of the planets and other bodies in our celestial, universal, backyard. And imagine, if you could, the largest planet or the largest rock that you can imagine, and then imagine that it's just a diamond. It's a solid diamond, and there are unimaginable numbers of facets on the diamond. So it's beyond, it's almost like the national debt. It's beyond our comprehension altogether, right? $34 trillion. We can't comprehend that. 34 trillion. We can't comprehend that. We couldn't comprehend trillions of creatures, entities that God has created that are not playing this little mad, mutually agreed upon definition game. This is a game. So this is a mad game. And Jesus calls it, I think, interestingly, a tiny mad idea. Mutually agreed upon definition. So I think it's an appropriate acronym. Right? It's a tiny mad idea that we could actually be kicked out of the realm of truth, and then even in this sphere, we find ourselves reenacting that, some experiences that make us believe that we don't belong, or that we're separated, or that we're isolated. Because God created you in a relationship, you didn't come into this experience alone, and you can't leave it alone. So you can't ascend by yourself, literally. When people say, you might ask the question, wait a minute, didn't Jesus ascend by himself? Absolutely not. He had a host he had a wife. He was in a holy relationship with Mary, and they attained enlightenment in their time together when he was here. But he also had a host of guides and master teachers that were appearing to him even when he was, single digits, like 6, 7, 8, 9. He was getting information. They would appear to him by his bedside, as his teachers. We all have those guides, and we all have similar teachers, but we dial a lot of it out with our thinking mind here. So I want to go back to the conversation and the question, which was a great one, which is, what is this? What are we really trying to get at? Well, if we're going to keep playing a game of mutually agreed upon definitions, we're really subjecting ourselves to what I'm going to label as a self-made prison. Right? Because when you get out of it, it's almost like you're exiled, and while you're in it, you can't act outside of the mad game of the mutually agreed upon definitions of what this group is saying is acceptable, and those other things are not acceptable. Oh, let's just say here's a church, and it says, you're going to go straight to hell if you are gay. That's kind of a mad idea. It's a terrible idea. Because you now, according to the church, which is saying that they're speaking for God, are determining who you can love. Well, good luck with that.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever fallen in love with somebody that you later thought, wow, I don't know if that was good for me or not, but I didn't have any choice. I give credit to my first wife, a cute little lady working the cash register at a grocery store when I was 18 years old in the Navy. And I got shore duty and went to the store, and there she was. The next thing I know, we're having babies. Much quicker than I thought I would ever have babies, right? Thank God. Those are some of my favorite people in the world. But my relationship with her was short-lived and raucous. It was rageful. And I was a child. And the madness was very prevalent. We never really know where relationships are going to take us, and I digress. But I do want to say that when we put ourselves in that particular prison, she was insecure about me because of what she'd experienced in her life up to that point. She was very young. So was I. And And so she was so consumed that I might meet somebody other than her, that eventually she manifested that experience, right? That's what we do, right? We manifest from the past thinking and the past commitments, we manifest the experience that right now we are building a bridge to our next experiences with our thinking mind. And if we're joined over here with this mind, called the ego, we're missing out completely on the truth, because this mind only knows lies, right? It only knows, it doesn't know any truth. It's insane, right? And it's missing out completely on truth. And we're also missing out on being joined over here with the experience of real love. Because when we are in unity with Spirit, and that Spirit doesn't give Spirit a good representation here. I'm just going to say, when we get to a certain level of vibration, I'm assuming that these vibrational fields are accelerating, that here is, we're getting close to the vibrational frequency of truth itself, of love itself. We're getting close to God, getting close to God. And then, of course, in miracles, Jesus says that we can have an experience of God, right? And he says that that experience is an experience of awe, and that awe should be reserved for a revelation of a connection, a communication with God. So awe is reserved for God, but love, or being joined in truth and being companioned, if you will, with the experience of miracles and those kinds of things, family, brothers and sisters, that's where the miracles occurring, right? But once you continue to, accelerate and grow through those experiences that are induced by miracles and being miracle ready, in other words, moving through these elementary levels and on up, then now you're kind of getting yourself set for an actual one-way revelation, one-way direct communication from God. That's blasphemous. There's a group, I think they're right over here, and you're going straight to hell for that one. Just for me saying that. Well, there's another group, and I think they're over here, they're kind of aligned together, and they will murder me for saying that. Because I'm dishonoring their God, etc., etc. So each group then has a field of containment. And once you join the group, you have to let go of whatever beliefs that you held that are in opposition to that group, or you will be catapulted out, or you will be punished within the group, right? So this group here is not going to be very nice to people that disagree with their practice of making God up in their image, rather than, I'll say that again, we make God up in our image rather than understanding through the process of connecting with this higher field of consciousness that truth, it will be revealed to you. So in this episode, Raj is continuously saying, you want to have the truth revealed to you. Yes. The truth will set you free. We've all heard that, right? So if we allow ourselves to play with the idea of letting go of our belief systems and just continue to admit that this self that we really believe that we are, and that we've been conditioned to believe that we are, and we're pretty committed to that belief, if we can begin to at least question it, even briefly, we can begin to find the boundaries that we've established for ourselves to be not so concrete. And then our vibration has changed, and now we are subject to being ostracized by the groups we're in. And have you I don't know about yourself, but I certainly have moved through several different groups of organizations and people, even family, even my direct family, that we're just not resonating anymore. We're not doing this. We're not playing in the same sandbox anymore together. We're just not. Because they don't get me. And while I can see how they believe what they believe, because I used to believe it, I have no reason to not like them because of what they believe, because they're still my family and they're still my loved ones. And I know in their own due time, they will awaken, because all of us are destined to awaken, so no question there. So what is then the singleness of purpose that he's talking about in this episode? Is to meet the need, right? Yeah. And there are those who heretofore might have studied A Course in Miracles and read it more as an absolute teaching. And so when you get to the part where he kind of is saying, well, you're not a body, you're spirit. You are as God created you to be. And he repeats this over and over and over and over in the lessons and in the workbook, in the textbook. You are as God created you to be. What's the point of that? So what are you? What is it that God created you to be? Anyone? What's your belief? Share it with us. Not everybody at once.
Well, somebody asked me, I mean, I think love is what I think.
Okay, nice. That's your true nature.
Yeah.
Could we say that that's your true nature?
Yeah.
Okay.
If somebody asked, if we're in a thing and somebody asks, well, who are you or what are you? I say love. I mean, that's...
Right. Anybody else? We have a microphone. We can pass it around. Anybody else care to? Thanks for sharing.
I think it's certainly love, but I think of to be in service, or to teach and to be in service,
Yeah.
to help others understand that love.
Okay. Beautiful. Anybody else? Of course.
I think we're here to have a peaceful, loving, joyful experience, and be a reflection of God and manifest it into flesh.
Okay. Now, one of the persons that was, anybody else? Yeah, come on.
I'll get points for saying it.
Points, absolutely.
It's unity.
Unity.
Is that good for points?
I think it's just the embracing of all of it. Just like you said, you can't be separate from it. So learning to love all aspects is, to me, your true identity with yourself, because you already are love. You can't be separate from that. So that's where it's attuned me to.
Okay. So you are as God created you to be.
Just going back in my mind of when years back, I would just say I'm a physical being having a spiritual being having a human experience.
Okay. A spiritual being. So what is a spiritual being? What's a spiritual being?
An eternal being.
What does it look like?
Love, peace, joy.
No, I mean, what do you look like? What's the image that you hold in mind?
Of God. It's
You have an image of God?
divine spark of God. We're part of God.
Okay, but is God,
No, I don't have an old man up in the, no.
is God something
It's an energy.
that's
it's a vibration.
physical?
No, it's an energy, it's a vibration.
And she's saying it's an energy, it's a vibration, and I don't need the microphone. It's an energy, it's a vibration. Okay, so let's say we all agreed on that. It's a vibrational field. It's a frequency. Okay? What is hate?
What is what?
What's hate?
Absence of love.
The absence of love. So we have a rheostat over here on the wall, so if I turn the lights down and it's dark, what's the difference between dark and light? Absolutely nothing. Except it's just the smaller amount of light. But there is really no such thing as total darkness. These are constructs that are hard for us to grasp with this egoic mind, literally hard to grasp because they're beyond our capacity to, just like $34 trillion budget, or deficit. I mean, we can't really get our head around that. We can't count to $1 trillion. We can't live long enough to count to $1 trillion if we had said, 1, 2, 3 every second. You can't live anywhere near long enough to even count to $1 trillion. So those are things that are hard for us to get our mind around and construct, right? But I like to look at it from this perspective based on some experiences. I'm going to put a word up here and I'm out of space, but mind. God is mind. God is the movement. The experience of God is the experience and recognition of the movement of the mind of God. And what would that look like? Creation. And what does creation look like? The ever and continuous extension of the frequency of love. Right? Love is always being made new, but it never changes. It's a little bit of a cone, right? It's changed. It doesn't change, but it's always, yeah. You can look at a kitten and feel love. That is an experiential experience of love. You recognize it. You notice this innocence of it, the kitten, and you notice they're just cute. I mean, they're just adorable, and you could, same thing with children. Some people really experience that with new babies, right? Some people experience that with elderly people. I experience it literally with people that I find they're having some serious illnesses, like muscular sclerosis or things like that. I feel my heart just pours out and I see innocence. And I don't necessarily see suffering as much as I see that they're showing us that innocence can show up in any form. And that there is a need that we need to recognize. That's one of the things that this lesson really points out to us, this episode points out to us, is that to be what you are, the singularity of purpose, your purpose is to be the extension and expression of God, of love, because that's what you are. And when we block it off, and block off truth and the whole thing, because we're focused in over here on false constructs of who and what we are, and our best imagination of imaging. Your imagination is just a string of images. And you can create a narrative, you can create a story. You having experiences, and you look back on those experiences, what are you seeing in your mind? Just a string of images that are representing that story. I had this relationship with this person that lasted a year, and I can recount the entire relationship in less than a minute. With just a string of images, good and bad. Suddenly, what am I doing? I'm realigning with the vibrational field of that experience. Because I was in resonance, I was in mutually agreed upon definitions of the resonance of that belief system and that relationship. So we look at these relationships as what's in it for me. And I'm referring to now the I, ego self, looks at relationships as, it starts out with, what's in it for me, right? But as we graduate through levels of consciousness, and we're joined with God, we are literally infused with the inspiration to be in service through our relationships. We're no longer in the getting mode, we are now in the giving mode. And there's a step somewhere in here that takes place. And we give our love to everything, regardless of what form it's taking. And when we see a need, we rush to fill the need. Because we can't, just like people that are doing artwork, it just pours forth and you're just, automatic writing and painting and music. It's just coming through. And sometimes for me, it's just being in a great conversation with someone and then things just start coming through. I often tell people, I do my best thinking when I'm talking. So let's have a conversation. I never know what's going to come through because it's coming through. And when I'm speaking, thoughts are things, and all of them have a particular energetic resonance, vibration, or frequency.
You wrote the word mind on the board. What is your definition of mind? I know it's not thoughts. What is your definition so we can agree?
Ask the question again.
You wrote a word on the board called mind,
Yes.
and I'm wondering what your definition is of mind. I know it's not thoughts, but I'd like to know what it is so we can agree to that.
Well, I was referring to the idea, just so it's something we can get our minds around, when we say, God, I am as God created me to be, right? And so we said love, we said spirit. Nobody said human or body or male or female. Nobody used any of those words. You all kind of shared your explanation of what that might mean for you, and it sounded like aspects of what God is. Because love itself is something that we can recognize, but it's never physical.
Right.
But it can manifest. It can cause the genesis of the manifestation of form and behaviors and making up of form from the inspiration we get from being in the field of creation. Love is the field of creation. Mind, and the reason I use the word mind, and thank you for the question, is because it's the easiest way for me to grasp it with my limited capacity to imagine what God is. Because I have an experience of mind, and I'm having it with you right now. And when I go to sleep at night, I will have an experience of mind, but it's pretty much singular because I'm kind of the only one in there. And I've had the last few nights just some crazy, wild dreams, but they don't stick with me, and I can't really tell you any of them. But I wake up going, well, that was really crazy, and it's just I'm moving and doing things that are just bizarre with people that are here in a moment, and there's a big agenda, and then suddenly everything shifts, and I can recall the dream a little bit for a little while. What I want to say is that those experiences are all a construct of my sleeping self-mind. Can we agree on that? Is it makes sense to you? Can you accept that maybe you're the only one in your dream? That it's all your imagination. And that aspect of your mind is not physical, but you think that you're physical. We believe that we are physical nonstop when we are joined, and we are joined with the mind that we've created, and we're seeing the world, just like putting on a pair of glasses, we're seeing the world through that view. And this mind is a thinking mind that we've created, and it's just constantly thinking of existence in an illusory construct, which is identical in its foundation as the small sleeping self. It's just all made up. He even points that out in this episode that, you know, if you think it's your reality, it is your reality. Yeah. And there are people who are absolutists in their study of A Course in Miracles that heretofore would say, well, you don't have to worry about their people. They're on their own journey of ascension. Just don't worry about that because you're not even a body and they're not a body. You just don't. And in this episode, he's being very, very clear. Meet the need. And the more you meet the need, and you know, we have some wonderful people that we've heard about, learned about, and lived in our lifetimes. And I'm trying to think of the woman that would go to all these. She would just love on people and go to all these dangerous neighborhoods. You guys know who I'm talking about. Mother Teresa. And just love on people. That is what he's telling us in this episode is your singular purpose. To be love, to meet the need. Where is the suffering? Where is the striving? Where is the opportunity for you to bring truth that God is love, and you are an extension of that into that experience for people in your life. And they're coming into your life as an opportunity for you to remember yourself.
Not so much a question, but just thinking about but I like the direction he was going, because I think sometimes you get a little hung up on, if you're an enlightened, healed person, and if you see somebody who's hurting and lost, right, that we don't want to ignore their pain, right? But I guess only at that, until the light of love can be revealed in them, it's absent, and that we just see an opportunity for love and healing to them versus just staying in our own little blinders. I thought he covered that a little bit, and I enjoyed that part of it.
Okay. So you said something that caught my ear was the light of love is hidden in them. What does that mean?
Well, that's it.
And just to say something, when you hold it, if you're doing this, nobody can hear you. That's okay. There you go.
I guess I'm talking with my hands. Sorry about that. Well, what I see it is that there's just this opportunity, because of the absence of light and love in them, for us to extend healing, to extend love to that person in that circumstance.
Okay. So this is light and love.
We extend our Christ mind to them.
Yours, is it hidden from them?
I think maybe at some level it is. So, yes, like you were just saying, like Mother Teresa going into these areas where, going into these areas where there's sickness or impoverishment, and
Disease.
giving and shedding light and love, and her healing, her healing vibration to them.
Well, if we uncover it, did it change? What about love has changed?
Well, I think they're shrouded in pain and maybe ignorance of whatever so they have this, whatever it is, and are putting themselves in the victim consciousness. And
Right. So the love the perfection of love that is them,
Right, it's there, it's just,
It's always
light
there.
needs to be given to them, or help, or that they need to find they need to, within themselves,
so what is
uncover.
the,
And your example with the phone is to uncover.
okay, so people at
they're
home didn't get to
shrouded.
see that, I guess I
Yeah.
should have done that over here in the camera. But I was taking my phone and putting it under a cover under a table, right? So to just make the point, how did Jesus behave beyond when John the Baptist baptized him? How did he behave? Did he go visit the sick?
He always saw the innocents.
He always saw the innocent. There was nothing, there were no, and here's the term I want to use, there were no obstacles to the awareness of love in his mind because he had X-ray vision. He could see through what we paint over people with our thinking mind, defining mutually agreed upon definitions of what the truth is for them, because it's what we believe is the truth for us.
Well, I think it's like being a compassionate observer, and you come with your truth and your Christ mind as a compassionate observer. If you're, I mean, in this particular episode, he talks about, just that of meeting the need.
But he's almost admonishing us in this episode to absolutely not be an observer.
But a compassionate observer.
There is one of the people in the audience that's
right.
talking about being a compassionate observer, and he's like, take the observer out of your consciousness. You cannot be a compassionate observer. You can either be compassionate, which is to be in action, or you're not compassionate because you're not in it.
And being in right relationship.
Being in right relationship is what Jan is saying. David?
What I came up with, and I've been fighting with this for a long time, is it means what the real meaning of no private thoughts means, which means no individual thoughts. I always thought, all right, I gotta say what's on my mind. It's the exact opposite of that. It's whatever, that no private thoughts. You've been saying it for a year.
Yes, I have.
I think I finally get it.
But
This phrase,
he actually brings that up in this episode, so thank you for pointing
Your
that out.
willingness to not claim a right to have your own private beneficent thoughts constitutes a joining. That's when you finally say, that's why you're not an observer. No.
That's why
The
he's
day
saying
you put
you're,
everything out of your own mind and say, no, I'm not gonna have any of my thoughts. None of my thoughts on this,
Right.
only God's
Right.
thoughts.
so how do we have God, thank you, how do we have God thoughts? Are we just going to be God thoughts? Suddenly we're just, okay, I'm God now, so I'm going to have God thoughts. No, we have to literally completely surrender our mad ideas, mutually agreed upon definitions, and ask, as we join in here with the higher consciousness that's required to hear the answers that we seek, and we have to clear our mind of thinking and move through practice of quieting the mind and asking. And we've gone through it again and again, and we will continue to go through it again and again. And, it's like asking a question. If you want to ask a question of Jesus, go for it. I do it all day long. Are you there? Yes. What's the truth? The hard part for me, maybe not for you, but the hard part for me is to stay in a place of spaciousness where I can actually have a dialogue where I can actually hear the thoughts of my higher self, the Holy Spirit, which is nothing more than your right mind, to be revealed to me as I'm reaching higher and higher levels of consciousness through my practice, ultimately to the point of experiencing unity, of experiencing communion, of experiencing dialogue, just like the dialogue we're having here. But for me, it was all in mind. My ears weren't hearing anything and my lips weren't saying anything, but I'm having a wonderful conversation and some profound awakenings because I had ascended, however brief it might be, and I was feeling this energy. I was literally like in awe. But Jesus is like, no, reserve that for God. You will have an experience of revelation. But you need to do the work, and you've got many helping hands along the way. And those helping hands, ultimately, just like Jesus had his teachers and his guides appearing to him as a child and communicating with him. They're helping us along the way, but we have to prepare ourselves by practicing very simple practice. It's like sit down and shut up. You know, I'm a little direct on that. I hope that doesn't offend anybody, but that's what you got to do. You have to sit down and disregard, and here's the word I like to use, ignore. You have the power to ignore the thinking mind of the small self. You have the power. Get thee behind me. That's the process. That's the holy instant. Right? Is making a space in mind, your mind, however you might define your mind as a place, a safe place, as Christ, in perfect safety, I release all tension. As Christ, in perfect safety, I dissolve my mind into the perfect peace of the mind of God. In this episode, Jesus is pretty clear that your experience here is really not about having fun. It is school time. Did I have fun at school? Sometimes. Briefly. But why was I going to school? To learn. Was it hard work? Yes. Was for me. And sometimes I failed miserably to keep my energy up to succeed, which is to follow behind one who has already moved on. So to remain in succession, we are here to succeed Jesus. I know, that's blasphemous. We're here to succeed Jesus in the process of ascension. And in that process, we begin to have a dialogue that's informing us of how we can continue to grow. And it can be as direct as that statement, which it was for me. I'm like, why am I going back? I don't want to go back to Toledo. I'm in Tennessee. And the voice said, because that's where you continue to awaken. Okay. I don't really want to go, but I left the next weekend. And I've been evolving ever since. Some days up and lots of days down. But some days up, maybe a little peak experience. Some days down, and some days there have been for me days where I really didn't experience any fear and I was at peace. Was that fun? I don't know if I would say that peace is fun. For me, it's feeling loved. It's a feeling of the complete absence of fear. There's nothing to be afraid of. And I would argue that there's very few people in our culture that have ever had even a moment or two of that. And they tricked themselves into thinking they had it because they were inside the prison wall of the mutually agreed upon definitions of the group that they had joined and then became a part of, and everybody was good to them because everybody said they behaved properly. And then you become that person, and somebody new joins the group, well, we're going to keep our eye on that one. We're going to keep our eye on that one just to make sure they do what they're required to do. You know, we had dozens and dozens and dozens of people here yesterday considering something in their group. They were considering something in their group, and they were having debates because they were trying to decide, did it make sense for all the members of the group to spend a lot of more money so that some members of the group could brag. Oops, sorry guys, you didn't hear. What I was saying is that they were spending time talking with each other and debating with each other about whether or not it was appropriate to take some action because it was going to be very expensive. But it would bring more people into the community. And they were really debating the mutually agreed upon definitions that these changes would make. And some people were not going to be comfortable with that, and they were worried about people leaving because they're going to be subject to additional costs of living, HOA or whatever they call it. So we do this all the time. We do it in church. We do it in work, right? And we do it in our community groups. So love is always everywhere. And the beginning of A Course in Miracles tells us, I'm paraphrasing, this is a required course. Only the time in which you take it is optional. And what is the purpose of the course? To remove the obstacles to the awareness of the presence of love. And I could say, just for fun, remove the obstacles to the boulder that's in the middle of your living room that you're acting like it's not there. Because if you think you're going to join a group of people and they're enlightened enough and they're good enough and they're well behaved enough and they mutually agreed upon definitions align very well with what you think is going to make you happy, good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
Because it's not going to work. The only thing that works is to join with Spirit, the mind of God, the voice of God, capital V, voice of God, the Holy Spirit, nothing more than your right mind, that is you, to join with that aspect that is you, that is not diluted by any of the thinking of this small sleeping self. And it is a sleeping self. And so it's not listening to any of that chatter, mind chatter. It's not listening to any of it. It's not diluted by that. So when you are expressing as joined with that self, expressing as that enlightened self, and that is your enlightened self, then you're not creating any obstacles. You're not creating any mutually agreed upon definitions. You're sidestepping this, and so people are not feeling rejected by the conversation and the teaching and the love that you're expressing because you're doing it with pure intent. And I'm adding those words, pure intent. And in this episode, he says, because of the purity of singleness of purpose. Say it again. Because of the purity of singleness of purpose, you are operating as your highest self. And you're not deluded by thinking and worrying about what does this person think about me, and this person, and this person, and this person. So you're not creating energetic fields of resistance that otherwise are popping up all over the place because you're putting yourself outside the group, but truly you're bringing the whole group into the same consciousness of where you are. Jesus is masterful. He always is. But every time I read one of his episodes or listen to him speak through Paul, I'm blown away, right? Because it just keeps taking me higher and higher. And I'm holding a higher and higher field. And almost everything that I see going on out here in the groups, you know, all I can do is laugh. I see some people that I want to just, how could you know, because I'm in spiritual community, and I got to be honest with you, most people are amazing. Most people in spiritual community are working on being their best self. And they're loving and compassionate and empathetic and curious and studying and giving and meeting the need of the mutual needs of the community and those within and without that may have special needs. But I can go somewhere outside this community. I've been kind of isolated here for a while. And I just watch how people treat each other, and they don't even look at each other. If you're not in my group, I got no time for you. You don't have the right color. You don't have the right color hair. You don't have the right color skin. You don't have the right clothes. You don't have the right relationships. You don't have the right education. You don't have. Specialness. I'm special and you ain't. You ain't even close. So you are never going to get in this group. Nuh-uh. Because our mutually agreed upon definitions require that you have checked off all of those boxes to even get in. It's insanity. And then once you get into these, and I watch these people, there's a lot of specialness going on all over the place, and I watch them, and sometimes they don't have time for anybody that's not in the group. They don't have any generosity. They don't have any courtesy. They don't have any willingness to even say, hey, hello. You don't exist if you're not in that group. And I've experienced some of that this week, and it's only Tuesday. Did you have something?
Well, I did, as far as in this episode too. I thought it was interesting that, Jesus answers that it's a dangerous question you ask. It played a role in his awakening, only the sense that the Holy Spirit can use every event on behalf of the one waking up. And he touched on Saddam Hussein, and they went into other atrocities like World War II. So,
right, and back then, now keep in mind that this was 2003.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. And I don't know if you want to expand on that. I mean, I think you are more or less talking about that in these groups and how we've segmented that way. But that Jesus did believe that he has been awakened. Earlier it said, just trying to find the page where it is. Oh, it says, many are surprised that Hitler is awake after such a short passage of time since the atrocities he engaged in. Is it possible for Saddam Hussein to wake up tomorrow and not some years after his death? Is it possible for each one of you to wake up tomorrow, keep that in mind, because it keeps perspective? So I just thought that was interesting that he really touched on a question that was, as he put it, a dangerous question.
So in a subsequent episode that we'll be enjoying before too long, somebody comes up with a conversation about Adolf Hitler. You feel, even if I say the name, as soon as I say the name, do you feel the energy
Oh, yeah.
of that? So is Adolf Hitler, boy, there are a lot of people that think, oh, there's a special place for somebody like that, right? Right? I mean, how could you do those things and ever be loved? And Jesus shares the story, and as soon as Adolf passed away, transitioned, he was celebrated and embraced and loved by the countless brothers and sisters of heaven, because he attained enlightenment. And he had fulfilled his agreement to help us see the tragedy that lies within our minds if we are not conscious of it.
That was Jesus said. Wow. Ooh.
Think about that.
We're no different than the people that you don't even say hello to.
That's right.
That same
Yeah.
thinking, that same mentality is that you don't have any worth. And
It's-
that's the way he treated people.
Right. And you're
So
just
there's a
fodder.
difference.
You're just fodder for
So
the other person. Has no value if they're not in agreement with your mutually agreed upon definitions of what should be and what shouldn't be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And kill them, hang them, stab them, shoot them, burn them, bury them alive, stone them.
But I do like the fact that he said that he does believe that Jesus stated here, Raj stated that he is now awakened. So, I mean, I think humanity, knowing that, any feelings that it invokes, you know that he is awakened now.
Who's awakened now?
Hitler is, according to Jesus, according to Raj.
Yes.
Right. And that's
But he's
awesome.
also saying something that's kind of fun in this one, because we've talked about it before a little bit. But Jesus is also saying that he is not, Jesus says, I am not fully awakened yet. Why not? Because we're not. And we are one.
That's a good point, yes.
We're one.
Yes.
And each one that does awaken
Yes.
reduces the commitment to the construct of the illusory mind, the insane mind. So your work is paramount
Yes.
and so important, because your purpose is to facilitate, this is Tony speaking, Brother T speaking, the continued awakening of the fellowship of man.
Yeah.
And you do that best by putting the oxygen mask on your face first,
Yeah.
and then being able to meet the need. The gift is the light of love. And once you have fully received it and accepted it, now you're not giving it out of specialness, you're extending it out of an inability not to. Does that make sense? Because you're joined with Spirit. This is who you become. This is your new capital I identity. You become as Jesus is. No ambiguity to that. Yes? Will you pass that mic?
So let's bring this into, we don't have to talk about Hitler or Saddam Hussein. Why don't we talk about Putin?
Mhm.
or what's going on in our time.
Mhm.
And we can not judge, love. I mean, what is our responsibility to mankind to, we just accepting and loving and helping to awaken, but this all seems to get willy-nilly and fuzzy when we get into real life, and of course, why we probably don't need to fear being killed. That's just a transition, but
Should we do something about it? Is that the question you're
Well,
asking?
yeah,
What's our role?
yeah, what's,
Reaction.
how do you work at awakening someone who's so far off the charts?
That's a good question. And so, the mutually agreed upon definition of some is that you need to do something. You have a responsibility. I have a responsibility. While, oh my God, why? Because there is war afoot. And if it's in your awareness, you're really not loving and compassionate if you don't mutually agree that something needs to be done. And guess who needs to do it? You need to do something. Just a minute. Just a minute. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Now, where does the come into you need do nothing? Where does that come into play?
Well, you're on page 3 and I was still on page 2. And that's a great question, because Ian was just asking what, and that's the reason I use that phraseology. You need do something, but the lesson, the teaching, the principle is you need do what? Nothing, right? So here's an analogy. Last night, while you were asleep, there was a horrible incident where some young Yahoo, I'm sure they were young, only Yahoos are young. Only young people are Yahoos, yeah, right. Was on one of those crotch rocket motorcycles, and they're tearing through, rich kid tearing through downtown Naples.
Oh, no.
And the battle began because of the mutually agreed upon definitions. Well, you can't do that shit, right? So the police officers, sirens on, lights on, screaming through downtown in the middle of the season, and hundreds of people are walking around on the sidewalks and crossing the streets, and they're tearing through downtown, willing to kill people to catch somebody that's breaking a mutually agreed upon definition. And you were asleep. And then they got up this morning. You got up this morning. And it wasn't a part of your awareness. What did you do about it? Did you feel compelled to do anything?
No, I didn't know about it.
You didn't know about it. So you weren't compelled to do anything because you didn't know about it. So you didn't extend any energies at all. No judgments, no criticisms, no applause. You don't even know how the story ended.
No, how did it?
Do you care?
Yes.
The what?
Tell us the rest.
Do you care
Well, yeah.
about the story?
Well, yeah, I want to know how it ended.
Okay, here's how it ended. You ready? All events are neutral, is that what you're writing? Yeah. I just made that shit up. But it's easy to get hooked.
Well, yeah. I want to know the end of the story. Make up the end, so, no.
So I want to come back to the point I'm trying to make here for you. If all events are neutral, what is this? What is it? It's an event. What does it mean? You get to play God and tell the end of the story. You get to decide what the end of the story is. And you get to take credit if you get involved and it turns out good. I was a good person. But if you were involved and you allowed people who, through mutually agreed upon definitions, expanded it, and millions, if not billions of people died, will you be happy that you contributed? Because we escalate into World War III. What's the end of the story? And what's the best way to deal with it? If you see a need of someone and it's within your grasp and there is some poor person that's affected by something that other people are doing out of madness, and you feel led because you joined in with Spirit and said, what's the truth? How can I be loving? Then follow your guide. But if you're not following your guide and you're acting on your own principle, and you think that this is going to solve it, or more guns and more bullets and more tanks and more missiles and more insanity, more madness, that this is the fix for that, that is the definition of madness. Keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. What can you, what, I have no power. Oh, my friend, yes you do. You can look at it and you can turn your back on it. Because if you give it your attention, if you give it your consciousness, if you give it your awareness, you are adding fuel to the fire. And it burns and burns and burns. But without the fuel, which is your awareness, could be you check out. You just changed the outcome. And you could say, all events are neutral. That's true. But if there's a need, sometimes the need is to not engage in insanity because you perpetuate it. I need do nothing. That's a need. I need to sit down, take a good deep breath, check in. Are you there? Oh, I'm so glad I'm not alone. What's the truth? How can I be loving in that situation? If your guidance and your heart are compelling you to go forward with some particular, and I promise you, if Spirit's speaking to you, what Spirit is going to share with you won't be on your radar. You won't expect what you're going to hear because it's not the feeble mind of an insane self. And you'll act because you're inspired to act, and you'll also act because you're acting out of fearlessness. Jay said, oh, go to Toledo, and I packed up my not yet wife and everything we could get in one car and drove 500 miles the very next weekend and had no idea why we were going, where we were going, and what we were going to do when we got there. But I knew something. I had a knowing. And that is that love is real. And there was nothing to fear. And we drove into that town, and the day we got there, we drove all night, stayed in some little hotel. We couldn't even get our luggage out of the car. It was packed. We couldn't see through the rearview mirrors. And we got to the town, and as we were driving in that morning, her phone rang, and one of her friends said, "Hey, you know anybody that's looking for a place to live in Toledo?" She said, "Well, yeah, we just are driving into town, and we were going to stay. We're staying over at the Red Roof or something. Neither one of us were working. We didn't have any money. We didn't know where we were going or what we were doing. We just had a knowing that we needed to go, because that's where we would continue to awaken. That's all I needed to know." And she had enough faith in me and my experience to trust that. And he said, "Yeah, this friend of mine, he lives downstairs in a duplex, and he likes quiet and he likes to meditate." And he talked in the landlord into letting him help choose who was going to be his neighbor. And he called me, and he's over here at such and such. We went over there, and we had a nice little duplex. We had the upstairs. Downstairs was a washer and dryer, and there's a garage out back. $350 a month.
Oh, man.
Free, basically.
You can't make this shit up.
Wow, that's great.
That's spirit moving.
Yes, sir.
That's the movement of the mind of God.
Amen. Amen.
All we had to do was to have faith and go with what we knew was following. That wasn't what I expected to do. I was arguing. I'm like, I don't want to go. We don't know. This mind knows absolutely nothing over here, but what their aspect that lives within your heart, your true self, the Holy Spirit, your right mind, it is you. And so when you let that self become who you're expressing as, everything you're doing is just blessing everybody and you, giving and receiving are one all the time. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. And it's worth working towards. Just like school, you got to work toward it a little bit. You got to do the work. You've got to help your body, and you've got to help your mind prepare for the absolutely unpredictable, and nobody's really ever been able to explain it to you sufficiently. You can only know it when you experience it. And that's why I'm here with you tonight. It's real. This is not a lie. And then you become that messenger, that teacher, that minister, and that voice. From the unity of being guided with your higher self, you'll know exactly how to respond to what the world is still trying to figure out how to respond to. And it'll be for you and everyone you touch. Everyone is going to be blessed, and already is, because you're already on the pathway, and you're there now.
Wow.
Okay. Miracle that's right. That's miracle readiness. So let's take a good deep breath, and we're going to pray out again. Thank you so much for the folks at home. If you've been hanging out this long with us, you're doing something miraculous. Something miraculous. Let's take a good deep breath. My eyes, my tongue, my hands, my feet today have but one purpose: to be given Christ, to use to bless the world with miracles. Father, I give all that is mine today to Christ, to use in any way that best will serve the purpose that I share with Him. Nothing is mine alone, for he and I have joined in purpose. Thus his learning come almost to its appointed end. A while I work with him to serve his purpose, and then I lose myself in my capital I identity and recognize that Christ is but myself. Amen. Behold, we make all things new. It will be so because we make it so. I love you, and I'm blessed by your presence. Thank you so much for hanging out with us in the upper room tonight, and thank you at home as well. Good night.